Soy Montserrat Peidró y estáis viendo Pax8 Live.
Pax8 Pro Services really gets to act as an extension of your team. So when you come across a new deployment and you need help, don't have the bandwidth or the expertise to do the project, this is where we can jump in and help along the way.
Enable our partners' growth through scalable and repeatable implementation and technical services.
Taking the partners on their growth journey.
We can really help a partner that's doing a particular kind of project for the first time by working through it with them.
We make it as easy as possible, and typically this is through a one-touch click into our cloud commerce marketplace.
Our services are repeatable. They are fixed scope. There's no unpredictability.
We look to take what is sometimes complex technology solutions, and we essentially make it simple for our partners to leverage those different tools through our package offerings, so that we can come in and work as an extension to your team and deliver those solutions to your customers.
We have the expertise to be able to take on project work for you if you just don't have the bandwidth for it right now, or we can teach you how to do it.
And that's where Pax8 Academy comes in. We've got programs that help the partner in the way they want to learn. We've got all this free on-demand content.
We have a number of subject matter experts keeping up to speed with the latest developments and enhancements, features and functionality.
There's always going to be vendors added, and if it has our approval, that means it's going to serve you.
If you're interested in learning more, simply check out the Pax8 Professional Services Engagement SKU in the Pax8 Marketplace at no cost, and our team will be in touch.
Help propel your business forward right out of the cloud commerce marketplace at Pax8.
What's up, everyone? Happy Wednesday, and welcome to the game on Pax8 Live, the show where we talk about all the cybersecurity shenanigans you need to be aware of. We're super excited for today's show, but before we get started, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all that jazz, to be interactive with us, and to leave comments that our producers can see and thus put on the screen to share with everyone. Make sure you're watching on youtube.com/Pax8Cloud. You'll see it there. It's the only currently running live stream on that channel. Join us there, drop your comments in there, and then we can actually put them on the show and interact with them. And yeah, don't forget to sign up for Pax8 Beyond, and let's jump straight into the show.
You know, it helps if you're not on mute. I don't know if that's just where we're going to close.
I didn't know if I lost
it
audio
like
or you, so I stayed quiet. Yeah,
no, it was totally me.
These happen.
No, for sure on the Beyond call out, right? Like, I'm excited about Beyond. I did just learn that I'm going to get to do the whole security track this year. It's going to be awesome. I'm super excited for what we're going to be able to do, and I hope you'll join us there. If you haven't signed up, please do. That's my one shill moment of the day. So I will say I'm super excited to see you all there, and it's always a fun time. All right, Dom, super excited about this topic. It looks like Tom Lawrence felt this was a great topic, so I hope you're catching this as well, Tom. And saw quite a few people interested in seeing this come up, which is this topic of BYOD. What are your thoughts on that, Dom?
Well, before I jump in, I should warn you that the fire alarm in the office just did a little boop. So if I disappear, that's why. But anyways, okay. Look, BYOD has always been a tough topic. I'll just start. I am anti BYOD workstation. Absolutely hate it. You can ask a large password management company about their own experience with that. But actually, with mobile application management and the advances, in Intune and similar applications, I'm actually pretty pro BYO cell phone kind of stuff because
Sure.
I don't carry around two cell phones, right? So I actually do appreciate the capability to sort of siphon off or cordon off work data with work, be able to wipe it, be able to control access to it, that kind of thing. But generally speaking, if you have unmanaged, bring your own device scenarios, it's guaranteed disaster, right? And I think Tarah will probably lean into some of that when we bring her on.
Well, and I think it's really, for me, about, do you even know? Like, do you even understand the breadth of it, or like for me, I was blessed enough to work at a company that we paid for cell phones for employees. And when they brought them, they were those phones for that purpose, which meant we had complete purview over them and assets from that perspective. But not everybody's in that situation. It doesn't always play out that way from a convenience perspective. And I think to your point, Dom, we'll get to this later, the rise in TPM, application management, enclaving in general as a cell phone capability. I'm kind of pro cell phone capability. I think it just makes the most logical sense. I will say that when you come to do we know or not, I think that's probably the biggest weakness for most people. And I think what we're wanting to tackle today and why we're bringing Tarah on to have this conversation is I think she's tackled it in a unique way. So I'm excited about the conversation. First, though, I think we have some brilliant words coming from our own brilliance internally, Robin Harris.
Are you ready?
I want to talk about basics, getting back to the basics, because a lot of times we get focused on the complicated things, the magical things, the newest this or that, and we can get so distracted that we forget about the basics. So I'm going to tell you a story. It's not a good story, but I hope it makes a point. There was a skydiver, and this guy was an avid skydiver. And he was just like every weekend he was going and doing his dive and just loving it. And this particular time, they were getting ready to do the dive. They open the door. He gets up, exits, like, yeah, I'm ready. And he had not put on his parachute. That's a basic. You can't get any more basic than that with skydiving. And obviously it has a tragic ending, but this is how we can become so distracted and unconscious about what we're doing, we forget the basics. And how that looks in security is a large social media company has all of these data, people's passwords and everything, and they put it in a location and they forgot to do something that was very basic. They forgot to protect that repository. It was left unencrypted, passwords completely exposed. That little mistake, and it was a mistake, it was a very human mistake. That little mistake cost that company like over $90 million in penalties. I'm going to tell you another story. I was recently impacted by a breach. It's not funny, but when we're planning our shows, one of the producers of the show says, hey, this will be a great thing to talk about. And it was a company that's like, oh, okay. So I went and researched it. The next day I get an alert that says, oh, you've been compromised by this breach. Social security number, all kinds of personal stuff just out there. This is one of the largest breaches of that type of personal data for us. And the company, kind of small company, they were involved in background checks. Again, we have the same scenario. We put the data someplace where it was not protected, it was not encrypted, and the bad actors got hold of it. They've had so many lawsuits from so many states, so many individuals, that they are now filing bankruptcy because they can't even afford to respond to this breach. They have no capacity for absorbing the penalties of this breach. They're not a really big company. They don't make millions and millions of dollars. But the fines, 20 states are coming after them. Individuals are coming after them. And just for them to pay for credit card monitoring itself would have been a huge burden. But all of that was done because of a mistake, a very basic mistake. You've got very sensitive data sitting in a repository that's unprotected and it gets breached. And so what I'm going to recommend is that just like with pilots, they love checklists. They love checklists. You don't want it to be something like you have to remember, did you check that all the engines are working? You don't want to fly that plane where they're leaving all of this to their minds. They have checklists. And it's a very simple thing to implement. Anything that is really serious for your business, where missing a step can be catastrophic, maybe you might want to consider having that beloved simple checklist. Do A, do B, do C, check it, initial it, then attach it to your ticket or file it or whatever. You don't want people to have to remember this stuff because inevitably somebody is going to be so preoccupied trying to rush through, trying to get things done, they're going to forget something basic. And the results of it could be catastrophic to your business. So I am going to recommend, highly, highly, highly recommend that we fall in love with checklist.
Time to level up. Level up. Okay, I didn't think I could be any more in love with Robin Harris, and my wife's going to start talking here pretty soon and not being very happy about it. But going to checklists and speaking towards pilots, I had Alyssa Miller on, and we talked about this of a talk that she does on stage around, why do checklists matter? Well, it's because somebody fell out of the sky for the reason that one of those points is there. Why do I turn and check the left magneto and then turn and check the right magneto and see if the RPMs drop it? So if I'm down to one magneto, I have enough RPMs to continue spinning the propeller where I need it to be, right? Like that's the point of it. And so anyways, the point is I do love that call to action. And speaking of measuring your checklists, you can have a stupid checklist that doesn't actually validate what's actually happening in your organization. You could say, yes, my people have been told to do this. Yes, my people are going to do this. But unless you're measuring it all the way down to the end human and the end consuming body, you're not going to get that information. I want to let Tarah introduce herself. I asked Tarah to join us. I will disclose in light of my FTC disclosures, I am a board member for Red Queen Dynamics and try to guide their decisions. But that's not the reason I have her here. It's because of you tackling this problem in a unique way. And then we'll kind of get into your thoughts of BYOD. Dom said he loves BYOD and we should have no restrictions upon it. I think I gave the more solid answer.
Only if your iPhone is at least 4 years old, though.
Thank you, Dom. Or 9, if you can. Tarah, introduce yourself, please.
Oh, God. Folks, it is such a joy and a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm Tarah Wheeler. I'm the CEO of Red Queen Dynamics. And as Matt has already said, I had the good earthly sense to ask him to come and give us some advice on the right way really to integrate with MSPs and small businesses when it comes to cybersecurity compliance at the level where I think a lot of enterprises really just don't feel the same kind of pain that we from the small business world really do. So, some more stuff about me. I am a student pilot right now, and approximately 11 months ago, you could find me on my ass in front of the U.S. Senate Department of Homeland Security Committee, saying very much the same kind of thing about checklists that I think Alyssa says. I think there's a really big crossover between the cybersecurity and the aviation community for a lot of really good reasons. And those reasons are, if you do the right thing over time, carefully and repetitively, and improve upon those things bit by bit, you end up with better outcomes. That's why we love our checklists. I love checklists. I really, really do. I mean, 99% of stuff you get to do because you are picky about checklists is boring as hell. The last 1%, always exciting. So, Matt, thank you so much for having me aboard today. Dom, you're wrong about BYOD. Continue.
And Tim sure agrees with you. He said in my comments, here's the YubiKey. That's your 2-factor if that's the only need for your phone. Like, love you so much. But back to the checklist, and I'll validate this too. Tarah, when I travel and I pack my bags to leave my house about 60-something times a year, probably, something like that. And every time I have a bag that goes in the base of my backpack and it contains these items. I have a bag that goes next that contains these items. I have another bag that goes right inside that one that has these items in it. And if it's not sitting there, along with my plastic bag with my food in it and my headphones on the top of that, I am not prepared to leave. And that checklist extends into the other case and the other case. And maybe I'm just proving my OCD nature here. But my point is those checklists are meant to make sure that I don't not have the cable I'm supposed to have, or the clicker that I'm supposed to carry, or the headphones that let me sleep on the plane, or those things that have come out of necessity. So
I mean, I have a whole
this wasn't a show about
notebook
checklists. Go ahead,
section for every trip I take, what event it is, where I'm going, the checklist to get to that event. Sometimes it's Uber, sometimes I know that market's better for Lyft. But like checklists run my whole entire life pretty much. checklists and Outlook
Yeah.
calendars. That's
I
it.
know I know this isn't an EDC like podcast right now, like that's more my husband's and like the rest of YouTube's purview, but I actually have a nested set of bags.
Yeah.
The smallest one is like solves AV problems, and they increase in size gradually until they hit like the Matryoshka bag, and they each one of them is set exactly perfectly for every single trip I take. I know exactly where to lay
Yep.
my hands on everything. And what I actually have is a checklist where I do an audit of my travel checklist every year in January, Matt. That's what's up.
I knew you were going to take it to auditing. Like I didn't even have to plan this out. This
I
is
did.
amazing. Because that's exactly it, right? I can't just say the bags are there. I have to actually check their function. Like I got a new iPhone. I now have USB-C. Maybe I don't need all those stupid lightning cables anymore. And yes, I hate you, lightning. But ultimately, you know, we're now down to a path where checklists rule the world. Well, let's get back to this problem around BYOD, and what I mean by why I called this and other lies we tell ourselves is that if you were to ask most people as a query, do you have BYOD? Do you have bring your own devices in your environment? Dom, what do you think most people are going to say?
Well, they're either going to say yes, but they're unmanaged, or they're going to say, no,
Okay.
no, we don't allow that. It's against policy.
Sure. Oh, you said policy. Gotcha. Does policy mean that you technically cannot use it? Meaning there are technical barriers in place that you cannot use another device, the only device
The
you
term
can
pinky
use?
promise was used, so it should be pretty airtight.
Of course it was. Well, then let's check in on Pinky Promise. Tarah, what are your thoughts? Like, I know why you started what you started, but let's take people to that journey. Does Pinky Promise function?
You know, Pinky Promise, I think, would function if people understood the consequences of their actions, if they understood the environment we were operating in. I don't think anybody is deliberately forswearing themselves, right? I don't think that they're abrogating their oaths to their lieges here. I think what's often happening with BYOD is people don't understand the consequences of what it means to access work information on a personal device. So,
Sure.
you know, we'll get more deep into what that looks like. But one of the examples I like to give is half of this country exists in much more than half of this country at this point, but half of this country exists not only below the information security poverty line that Wendy Nather has talked about so much, but above the line of subsistence kind of business where you're actually doing stuff
Sure.
that matters. You're in the Defense
Right.
Department
Yeah, sure,
supply
totally.
chain, you know, you're a third party vendor, a supplier, like a subprime contractor to a big contract, something like that, right? You're meaningfully doing business in this country, and you've got 30 guys in trucks named Jeff with broken Android phones that are 5 years old, right? So the problem is, it's not that Jeff is an idiot, right? There's a lot of jobs out there that I don't want to do. Okay. Like I do what I want to do, and I keep accountants and lawyers and truckers and bankers and, you know, retail aficionados and restaurateurs. We keep those people safe because I don't want to do their job. I want to sit down at a restaurant and I want to buy a meal and I want to walk away and be like, I got your information security, you know, you got the escargot, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
the thing I think really happens is with policies, we hope and we pray and we put a little paper over the top of it, but we never really explain to somebody like Jeff in the truck why you don't log in to information systems and have that system available to anybody else who's got access to your phone. So the
Yeah.
example that I like to really give to people is, you know, we've got a client of one of our clients, because our clients are MSPs and MSSPs. One of our clients is a 30-person trucking company in Cough, Midwest state, and one of their contracts is with the guard base nearby. And it doesn't really matter to us what's in their trucks. But I'm here to tell you right now that if you normally have 10 trucks going back and forth supplying that National Guard base with MREs, with, you know, tire supplies, doesn't matter what it is, all of a sudden that number 100 X's, it gets really interesting what information Jeff is accessing on his personal phone as he's booping in and
Sure.
going from point to point with that box truck heading to the National Guard base. So, I mean, I think it really matters a lot more than we think it does to
Sure.
have technical controls and real understanding of what's going on people's personal devices.
Yeah. And speaking of Pinky Promises, when I think of box trucks and shady deals, I think of Travis Woods. And Travis,
I
the
do
only
too,
reason you've
actually.
done deals, what's that?
I do too. That is a very Travis Wood
Yeah,
style deal.
but the only reason you think of pinky promises on deals is in Colombia, you have to prove you still have that pinky, Travis. And so that's it's usually a good statement. No, I tease, man. Love to see you, Travis. It's awesome to see you. But to his point is like, and I won't degrade, and I'll actually maybe, Terry, you kind of took us down this point of, like, if you educate people and teach them and put in the technical controls and put in the policies, then you have a higher chance of success. But you also have to check the data at that end, right? And it can get less simple than the simple, are they using an asset of BYOD? It could get into password policies, for example, things that are harder to measure. Are you actually using unique passwords everywhere? When you generate a new password, are you using your password manager, or are you storing a variant of summer was fun 12, right? Or something to that nature. And so you get into like, thanks, I've seen it. But like legitimately, the pinky promise has to be at least validated that your humans are doing the right thing. Because I do believe, I'm with you, Tara. If given the right instruction and the right value of what someone's doing, of like, oh wait, my janky phone being tracked could be a problem for me whenever I'm tied to this account that I shouldn't have even had on this phone because we had a policy against it, right? Hunter 10, exactly, Hunter 10. But the point is like, we don't have a good way to measure that. Now, for any of you techies out there who want to get nerdy with me, yes, one could argue that you could have effective CA policies that require registration, and the registration requires MAM policies that allow you to constrain that, and you validate that you have a TPM, you can go down all that path, and you can set it there. But there are so many other policies and processes that we set that we can't do it so easily upon with technical constraints. There are a lot of administrative-only aspects of this. So Tara, why I got intrigued and saw you, in fact, I'll even call it out, if nothing else but to lock in Pax8's IP that we get out of this and make it legally binding. But your questionnaire I saw at MSP GeekCon. You were talking on stage, I'd never seen your product before, and when you articulated to me the way you're gathering the data and who you're talking to and how you're gathering it, it actually changed my CIS mapping process, because I realized that I had been approaching this as someone talking to other educated professionals. And what your process taught me was that I should be approaching it as people that aren't educated on this stuff, that know their product and know the things they do every day really well. So why don't we kind of tackle that? Maybe you talk about what you do without saying your name. If you only get to say it one time, it'll show up on the slides anyway. So the point is, like, what did you do differently, and what led you to that conclusion of crowdsourcing this in this way?
Sure. I don't have to say our name again. Say my name. Now I've only got it stuck in my head. It's a song. So the say my name, right? No, there's a better variant. So the reason this matters to me, the reason we built this the way that we did is I think it's hard, it's difficult, but it's not that complicated, right? There's a lot of stuff that's hard to do and not that complicated. See also push-ups, right? Not that hard to figure out, right? But it's pretty tough to remember
Sure.
to do it all the time. So I grew up in the MSP world. I was 16 the first time I dropped out of high school. Don't ask about the second time. And I went to work for my stepdad's MSP. And that is the first time I really got an education. Not only was I help desk, not only was I, kind of in trucks going and fixing stuff, building stuff, taking it down to the carpet and back up to boxes again at local, businesses. What I was doing, and I didn't know it at the time, was getting a hell of an education in what people see when they see technology. And I ended up, in tech doing a bunch of stuff. Don't even ask me about that right now. But suffice to say that I'm back around full circle in this world after doing consulting for a lot of years. And when I would have to translate cyber compliance regulations, vendor assessment policies for Facebook, cyber insurance questionnaires and stuff like that, I would read these questionnaires and I would have like 7 of them lined up together. And when I was asking a question about whether or not there was password uniqueness at a business, I didn't read off what it said at CIS, whatever the hell it was, 2 point something something, right? You're not
5.2.
reading off the question. 5.2, thank you. You're not reading off the specific question in 7621, the SMB guide for NIST CSF, right? What you say to
Right.
the person is your home and work email password different? Right?
Yeah.
That's the question that you ask people, and you ask them this so that they can answer the question in a way that tells you the truth about what's happening. And I started realizing that I was coming up with 12, 15, 30 of these kinds of questions where I would give a simple analogy. My God, I can give an analogy in cybersecurity about baseball, omelets, the Olympics, football. I got your football. I got your
Oh,
NBA. I
I
got
got
your NHL.
football
I got any
crushed. I
professional
got
sports.
hands
Oh,
down on
so
football.
much.
Bro, I have
Oh,
that one.
yeah. Bro,
I understand sports
golf.
ball.
I got your golf. Yeah.
Oh, you got golf? It's the
So
low score
I got
methodology. Is
golf.
that that's the
Oh,
compendium? Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. So like, you get your analogies together and you realize you're never asking the question that's on the checklist. You're
Yeah.
always asking a translated question that we as professionals need to ask somebody to get the truth out of them. Not saying, I want you to nod yes to this question, right? And it's an
Right.
asset
No,
inventory
you
question.
know what the worst
I'm
is?
gonna, yeah,
Please clear your desk. Dom, you've never heard this. Please clear your desk. We've got auditors coming around to check for clear desk policies.
It's never happened. It never happens. No. But you know, it's almost like you're talking to actual people.
Thank you, Tara.
Like
You just triggered
it's
me on
almost
that.
like you're having a human conversation, right? Like, which we're not known
yeah.
for in
Well,
cyber, outside of cyber.
if I want to have a human conversation in cyber, like I'm actually, for those of you that don't know, I'm married to this lovely human, Deviant Olaf, and we're actually visiting his parents for, the holidays right now. And there's a big mirror behind me, and that's why I'm on this podcast right now, because I said asset inventory into it 3 times at midnight last night, and Matt Lee summoned me onto his podcast. So,
Oh, man.
yeah,
That's
there's a
funny.
human element to all of this that we just don't. I think we skip over that piece because it's so hard to do. It's the push-ups,
Yeah.
right? It's so
And there's a
difficult
simple
to do that
question
again and
like,
again. Yeah.
do you
Mhm.
use a personal cell phone device to access MFA or email resources at work? Yes or no? Do you another question, do you sign into company resource web pages from your personal device? Like just simple questions that people can answer in a way that makes sense. And I think by doing that, you're adding governance to a policy. It's one of those things where like I think Dom Kirby said we had to say this 4 times to keep Rex happy today. But to quote Rex Frank, right, inspect what you expect. Like governance is inspecting what you expect. If I say as a company, we're not going to be using our personal devices to access things, not only do I have to put in technical ways to stop that from happening and to put in due care compendium for that, I also have to inspect whether or not people are doing it. Look at device names. See if they've been renamed by Intune. See if there's access happening in logs, like things that are needing to be there, but also crowdsourcing the answers. Let's bring up a couple of slides of what you actually have done. You gave this talk at MSP GeekCon with Deviant. It was awesome. I loved it. I don't know if the audio and video are quite up to snuff. Sorry, just poking at Jason, but I love you. But the teasing. But the point is this
Love
one,
you, man.
like, for example, right? Love you, brother. When someone contacts you about a technical support issue, how do you ensure they are who they say they are? You either check, I sign into the technical support system to verify their request. I review paperwork and credentials they present me. What is this more options thing, Tara?
So, one of the most important things that we do and that we think is important to do is let people tell you what's actually happening in a way that is simple and understandable for them to relay to you. So, when you boop to show more options, when we ask questions of people, we ask a simple question with the most common answers, not the right one, the almost right one, and 2 weird ones. This isn't a standardized test, right? We're looking to get the actual truth of what's going on here. It's not the SATs. But when you drop that arrow down, you're going to get the same thing on every single one of our questions, which is, I don't understand this question. I don't think I'm the right person to answer this question. I think somebody else should answer this question, not me. Or I don't understand and I want to explain a little bit more. I'm doing something different. And so it turns out that if you let people explain to you what's happening, you get, as one of our clients actually said, a boundless well of advisory activities. Because you're understanding in that moment. It's kind of great when you answer those questions all the way through and you got a 40-person company and 20 of those people think that they haven't gotten any phishing training. And the IT department is like, what is happening here? How is half of the company not understanding that what they got was phishing training? Do they not know how to identify a phishing email? Right. You've got to
Did they
let
not
people
watch it?
explain to you
Perhaps
what's
maybe
happening.
slide the slider to the end
Right.
and click done, right? Like those type of things.
That never happens either.
I love tackling.
Let he who hath not, right? Like the most fun ever is figuring out how to break compliance trainings in corporations. So, but yeah.
The other nice thing is you could almost find ways where if someone answers it that shouldn't be answering it. For example, let's go to this next one that talks about, so are you aware of any active accounts of former employees or contractors? Like, I would hope that most people don't actually know the answer to this question. Like, I don't want every user to know what's rotated and how it's rotated and when and but I might want them to say, I don't know, but Bill, our compliance officer, is the best person to answer this. Or I don't know, but we have policy with our company that does this through our HR team. Like, that would almost be validating of the control. And then you get the one answer from the person that should know the answer. And then that's great. You're like, yes, we use this. You can almost tell a story in the data. And I also want to take this to talk about something that I did in a talk earlier today. And it was about the definition of intelligence. Open source intelligence is where it was being talked about vis-a-vis a SANS article. And in the SANS article, she was saying, like, information that's just gathered isn't intelligence. Information has to become actual knowledge. It has to become things that we know to answer a intelligence question. Like, back to your example, are a bunch of trucks moving to San Diego right now, right? If so, maybe they're gonna do something in that theater, right? Versus having just data, like trucks are driving places. That doesn't mean anything. Right. You have to have contextualization. And what's interesting about this approach is I think it adds a lot of contextualization. Like, even in your example of, we're not doing fishing training, that's contextualization to know, guess what? It's not working. Like, you at least know that now, right? Like, especially if you know they took the training and now don't know they took the training, it's not working. Yeah.
You might be surprised about something on this one though, Matt. There's a real, I think a real struggle we upon occasion have, and we've fired a couple of clients over this one. There are clients who don't want to know. And that has been a real struggle because we're the first real opportunity to get that telemetry inside a business at it's 18 seconds a question, right? Like, somebody's answering this question, they're doing their compliance instead of hours and hours of painful phone calls later. But here's the problem. That nudge behavior that we get people to engage in week by week also means we're getting the truth. And there's a lot of clients that don't want the truth. They can't handle the truth. And they don't
I figured that's where we were going with this.
Because you're discovering that you're actively in violation of things like your cyber insurance premium policies and requirements, right? Now, cyber insurers are just thrilled to get this information and thrilled if you're improving over time, right? But there's some clients who've been we can't have them answering honestly. Good God, they'll tell the truth. And we're like, then we can't help you, bro. XYZ solutions.
Well, I think there's an argument.
Bye.
Tara, I think there's an argument, though, that I wouldn't trust this data as all that fidelitous either. I would just say it is contextualizing, right? And even though I don't necessarily know that Bill in accounting is always going to know all the things and he's going to pass it, there's two functions playing out. One, I'm getting a more real barometer of what that function is. I'm at least getting a closer approximation of that. But I'm also shaping their behavior because they eventually learned they got it wrong. And then they are told to get better because they learned it through contextualizing what they read. And so I think there's a certain aspect of this that is both shaping behavior, but also gathering the information in a kind of more novel way. I think it is one of those things where if you're asking something like this next one that comes up of what happens when someone has to perform maintenance at your workplace, like, you're more reinforcing that statement to them, hopefully, that at some point you're showing and circling back to go, yeah, we're making sure they're signed in, that Deviant can't just walk in and walk out with 25 laptops, I think was the actual example you gave during this talk, if I remember, just to not steal his thunder, but restate it. Deviant was talking about how he was tasked with stealing a laptop and realized it would be much better to be hyperbolous and just steal all the laptops, if I remember correctly, was his talk. He just walked around with a cart and said, hey, we're coming back with new ones from IT next after lunch, and please put them on the cart. And he just walked out with all of them out the door. But the point is, you're actually asking those questions. And back to your point, Tara, of like, sometimes they don't want to know. I experienced this firsthand. I was working with a company called Credivera up in Canada, and they're doing some really cool work around distributed identities, and distributed identities specifically around one-to-oneing someone's driver's license in Canada to their identity, and that identity being able to be plugged into another identity source and say, as long as you have your driver's license, you're able to drive this truck, and the identity should turn the truck on for you through your IDP. But if you don't, then we want that truck to turn off. There was so much pushback of going, well, we actually do better when we don't know for 30 days that they had a DUI yesterday. Like, we can have them drive for 30 days. Like, it's so much better for capitalism, right? And so to your point, there is like, definitely, swear to God, that was a legit conversation. It was delicious. But you're right.
It happens. It
It's how it
happens. You know,
happens.
it's
People
better
don't
for
want to
capitalism
know.
if a it's better for capitalism if the company can continue to operate, but the problem is that they are in violation of those SLAs. Now, again, we're contextualizing that information. It's internal. It's
Yeah.
your opportunity to train and to
Well,
get better, so that a year from now, once you actually need to boop and print off that PDF, you're watching not only that steady reline, but you can demonstrate and prove that you're better than 99% of American
and the
businesses in
improvement.
cybersecurity, right?
Right? And I like to tell
Yeah,
people
it's the
it's about the
improvement.
journey. I want to see that we suck now and suck less next year and suck even less the next year. Right? That shows the journey. I mean, if you look at like Ohio's laws on safe harbor, they say must show reasonable compliance at time of the breach, right? That just means I need to make reasonability. Well, what's reasonability? It's defensibility. Defensibility is the ability to prove what I did, and showing that I had a populace that didn't understand this. I'd been passing my phishing test because everybody knew that the I know this fake domain.com isn't going to be a legit domain now, and they just don't click on them. But does that mean they understand phishing? Can I ask questions that test their knowledge and test their capabilities in a random way that help me understand what they're doing on a daily basis, and especially around operational aspects? You target your HR team and ask, I know that people are disabled when they're just like, those are things where you can get contextual information about your posture from that methodology. And I think a lot of GRCs will probably start approaching it this way. I think that's what you're doing in your own endeavors and how you're licensing this and working with people. But ultimately, I think it's collecting the real answers and then trying to compare what you expect those answers to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Strongly agreed. It's not just comparing to what those answers should be, but giving people the opportunity to get better over time. This is not a checklist exercise where you do it once a year. This is about the health of your organization, right? And you know,
Yeah.
we don't let people go back in time and answer questions from a previous week. You can't go back in time and do the push-ups and eat the broccoli you didn't eat last week. You can't go undrink those tequila shots. Ask me how, right? Like you can't go do that. So your journey is, as always, just trying to have the right habits most of the time, to have people answering your
Sure.
questions most of the time and do the right thing with security, so you're not the slowest gazelle at the watering hole.
Yeah, pretty much.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we did promise people a show about BYOD. So to not be
Oh yeah.
disingenuous, let's talk about that watering hole. We think about, you know, you have to be the not slowest one at the watering hole. People aren't making it, y'all. Like I'm gonna say it right here. I'm part of ERT. ERT is the emergency response team. We take and help cases of MSPs going through tragedies. And we had an MSP today that just reached out and said, hey, you talked to us last year. I just wanted to let you know it's settling out. We're closing our doors. I spent $2 million on this business. We don't exist anymore over a decision that they made that wasn't governed. It just existed. It just existed.
Right.
And I think that's the challenge, is that we don't have to sit there and hope that this gets better. This gets better through attrition, y'all. I'm just trying to talk you into not being the one bleeding at the side of the lake. And I think the point is that validating these things in a way that's more meaningful is valuable. Let's talk about how you die through BYOD, though, right? Let's talk
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
BYOD in multiple different capacitances. If I have a phone that is rooted and someone has malware on it and I join, there's potential abuse of someone stealing that token, gathering session in between, to your point, Tarah, knowing location information, things of that nature. But it doesn't just stop with BYOD. There's BYO identity, right? How many of you have had a separate browser or a private tab that you open up at work, you put in your Gmail account, you sign in, you sync your home passwords, you use it to do your day-to-day stuff that you have to do over here, right? How many of you do that? If we were asking that question of, do you have a separate browser that you read your personal email in at any given day at work? Yes or no? Well, if somebody answered that question, guess what? The Cisco breach that happened with the Talos report doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. The whole breach doesn't happen. I did a breakdown of the CIS safeguards with respect to a lot of modern breaches, and that comes up common over and over again. In that case, they had synced their identity. They had synced a work password to that browser's identity and that password manager. That was compromised at home. They gained access. They got in through VPN. I'm definitely summarizing. But those pieces all played out where that didn't have any of the common safeguards in place. And it started with me bringing my own identity. And I'll tell you right now, I can still do that here. I can still do that on my work machine. It's hard to deal with. You're going to have to ask the question, Matt, do you do this or not? And if you don't find a way to get the answers to those questions, you'll never get context. Now, is that compliance? That may not be compliance. That's security. That's not getting kicked in the face. Does it also cross the line to compliance? Potentially. but it's definitely the not getting kicked in the face methodology that I prefer. And when it comes to BYOD, you have no control. And at the very best, Dom, and I like your approach, you're doing like device posture checks. Sure, you want to bring your phone for MFA. I want to see if it's rooted. I want to see if you keep that bastard up to date. I want to see if you use browsers that are up to date as you access systems, right, to that function. And so when you think about it, there's elements we can measure technically, and there's elements we can only measure by proxy or by asking questions or by inspecting what we expect, right? Dom, any other stories of BYOD death that come to mind to you? I probably have a plethora of them.
If you have a home media server that you also tend to use as a desktop, and you work at a company whose whole purpose is to help
Let's
you
say they store
perhaps
passwords.
escrow your sensitive data,
Let's say
it could be a problem. It could be, and here's the thing, and this is why I'm so against BYOD workstations, because we're so web-based. We're so connected to everything being Outlook on the web and Teams and everything else that it's really hard to detect that if you don't have the technical controls in place and you're not asking the right questions. But in this particular incident, and many of you watching have already figured out which one we're talking about, that this particular incident, the entire thing stemmed down to an out-of-date media software on a personal workstation that was authenticated to highly sensitive assets of this particular
which means
company, right?
There's no way that they would have passed Control 7 from vulnerability management for that asset, Control 1 for having that listed as an asset for them to track, extensibilities of the fact that, let's say, a software named Plesk or something might be running on it that was out of date enough to have an RCE that allowed them to bypass the system and run on the...
Plesk. Two different stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want to misattribute.
That's right, not Plesk. Excuse me. Very different. Both with vulns, but this one specifically.
Well,
Plex, yeah. No, tease. But yeah, the Plex instance. And that was one of those, Tarah, where you might ask someone, do you do development work from home on an asset other than your work asset?
I would ask that question, but the BYOD horror stories I have, I think they're so much more basic than that, is the real challenge. You can crack a big company that way, but I think what I think of when I think of like BYOD deaths is I'm thinking about last year. And last year, we all have our Signal chats and our Discords and Slacks and whatever. We're all connected to other security professionals and stuff like that. And a good stop making more. There's a chat that I was in, and it's a friend of mine, like a big name infosec person, specialized in one of the areas of information security, and well-known and wonderful person. His accountant had just gotten hacked. And we're all specialized in cybersecurity, right? Like, you want to go to somebody and have your foot repaired. You don't go to a cardiothoracic surgeon, you go to a podiatrist, right? Like, we know that there's specialists. So he says, okay, well, who knows about helping a small business recover from a data breach incident that is paired with ransomware? And I was like, over here, Bo. I'm here for you, buddy. And he says, all right, so can somebody help these folks? And I said, what I can do is I can point you at any of, 10, 15 different places that can help a small business do this kind of recovery. And he says, okay, their budget is $2,500. And I said, sorry. Just check
I love
it.
that they budgeted their recovery. That's nice. Yeah, that's cute.
Oh yeah, it wasn't just the budget. It was that this accountant is a 20-person accounting firm, and they're in one of the mandatory notification states for data breaches.
Sure.
Did not understand that when one of his employees used her personal device and it was breached to access their internal controls, and the personal information and financial data for 3,000 high net worth individuals in a mandatory data breach disclosure state was revealed to a threat actor, and then they were being ransomed for that information.
Sure.
The first thing he thought was...
Or double extortion in that way.
Triple extortion. Absolutely. All of those different directions. The first thing he thought was that there was going to be a price tag on this one. The second one was, I can absolutely point you at some wonderful recovery firms. There's not a single recovery firm I can think of that's going to pick up a phone with you for less than a $60,000 retainer to start, which blew this guy away. And then he said, and how do we make it so we don't have to tell all of our clients what just happened? And I went, all right, you got a real problem here.
So
I'd referred him. Yeah.
I will tackle one piece. I will say I've seen some cheaper incident response teams, but not by a huge amount, right? Even for SMBs, simple account
Not for
BCs,
$2,500
things like that.
Right.
That's
What's that?
Nope.
not for
Not for
$2,500.
$2,500.
Not for 2,500. Still like 30 or 40,000 for sure.
Right.
As an entry point. And insurance usually will cover some portion of it if you have insurance. But to your point, that's another gap for SMBs. But Tarah, to your
It is,
to,
and by
to your
the
point,
time
sorry
he
for
was done,
interjection.
yeah, no, but by the time he was done, I mean, this business has lost half of their business. The question is open as to whether or not they'll remain in business. And here's the thing that's gonna blow your mind, Matt and Don. Do you know who this guy called when this first happened and he first got the extortion demand? Take a
Who's
guess.
that?
The
I mean,
local
I would
police
hope.
department.
Oh, yeah. I've played that game. They don't care.
It's not just that they
it's
don't
fine.
care. They have no capacity for it. And
Nope.
this guy didn't even know who to report it to.
Sure.
And right now, it's an open question as to whether or not this business is going to recover. And it is
Yep. We've seen it.
heartbreaking to watch him let half his staff go. You know, these are 55-year-old ladies who do accounting and bookkeeping, right? And this is a
Right.
business he thought he was going to sell in a year, and it's done, right? That is the price of BYOD and no understanding of why that matters for information security.
And let's tackle Travis Wood's question from the chat. Travis asked, SMBs always cite the cost of providing mobile hardware. Back to our BYOD conversation we're having. What are some solutions to that argument? I'll tackle my first thoughts on this. Thank you, Travis, for being here and commenting. I'm not necessarily saying you can't do BYOD. I'm saying you need to understand how you're using it, make sure that your users do, and then take the appropriate risk curve for yourself. You know, Tim Sure said, you know, here's your YubiKey, that's it, done. What if they do need email? What if they do need their calendar? What if they are using those things? How do we set appropriate MAM policies to govern that data, to encrypt that data where it sits, to ensure that I have a TPM, to ensure the phone's not rooted, to ensure it meets minimum device health? So one of the first things I'd say, Travis, is I'll push back on the fact that there can't be BYOD, excuse me, and that we could actually do this by the right way by saying, yes, you can use this, but I have to have access to your phone. Now, when you start thinking about it, it gets more complex than that. 10.1 says have anti-malware capabilities on devices. I don't know that I'd argue that just simply enclaving is enough for that. I think you might need Defender on there, which then, Dom, you might push back and say, I don't know if I want Defender on my phone from work, right? And so you get into this kind of delicate balance there. What are your thoughts
So
on that, Dom?
from an end user perspective, right? I have Pax8 stuff on my phone, and like I'm in the office this week doing. Did we lose Tarah?
Nope, I'm here.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I'm in the office this week doing leadership planning, which means I'm on my phone a lot because I'm walking around and going places. I would be real on the struggle bus if I didn't have data on my phone, but I accept the fact that there's MAM in place, that the applications are managed, and I have the benefit of fully understanding, you know, the limitations of that too. But there is a limit of like, no, I'm not enrolling my whole personal device, and no, to your point, Matt, I'm not putting your Defender on my phone. For me, I would just stop having it on my phone and, you know, be less effective leader. I don't know, but like there is a limit as an end user too.
And there's a compliance limit there as well too. That absolutely, there's of course, thanks. And there's a compliance limit there as well too, because I'll tell you right now, I do not want to manage the data that sits on people's personal phones. Do you know what's on that photo roll? Because I do. Right, I do not want to have compliance requirements and GRC over somebody's phone. Like everybody's like, oh, they're going to look at my phone. I don't want to. I know what's on there, right?
Yeah,
And
I
that's
won't
the
even
real
get into my
challenge too.
story
Is
on
how do you
that
get
one.
it divided out? Yeah.
Yeah. You know, the funny side tangent that you went down just because you did. There's a buddy of mine that was talking about end-of-life planning. It was Robert Chiaffi, and he was on stage. And he was talking about the challenge of, like, how do you go through Dad's phone? Like, at what point as a kid when Dad passes away or Mom passes away, like, do you like, go through them and see what to keep? Like, do you archive them and keep them around for family? Like, how does that happen? Like, anyway, so it was a very interesting talk of him wanting to have that pre-sorted. So
of like my
he was
fondest
paying a
memories with my
service.
kids. They are printed. They are, you know.
There you go.
Phone can self-destruct.
Oh, anyways, didn't mean to get off on a digital footprint conversation.
Yeah.
Back to the point of BYOD.
There's a lot of ways to be. Yeah, exactly.
There's ways to be compliant, and even then, it's a matter of what risk tolerance you're willing to take. Because, Dom, I would argue that not having DNS level or the ability to filter for C-squared domains and look for those things on your phone, might be a limitation that as a posture perspective, I don't know that I'd want to have. And you'd have to figure out for yourself as an organization, do you buy Dom a phone, right? What do you do to solve that? Is there a certain space where it makes a lot of sense and I do want that full control of that asset? I would just predict that we are way early on how much we'll actually have to deal with this over the next 10 years.
Let's step back just a layer too. And this is not tech, but I don't care where you live. I do believe it is wholly inappropriate to mandate that one uses their personal device for work without some level of reimbursement
100%.
and having that pre-planned in the employment agreement, right?
Agreed.
100%. Mm-hmm.
I don't have anything else
That's
to say.
a devastating
In which case, I'm a phone.
It's hard, yeah.
And then
that's a lot of it.
Yeah.
Please.
And a lot of this stems from the way we're trying to solve MFA and access and proof of identity and all of those things. But it started long before that, right? It started with, hey, Dom, you're on call this weekend. Can I just have your phone be the number that gets rang whenever the call goes off? And hey, I mean, it started so in that way, and we started paying for it just to fight that fight, honestly. We didn't even understand it as a security threat. I just wanted to say to Dom, here's your phone for on call. Like, it needs to be charged. We're not paying for the power. I think you can afford that or charge here at the office, right? Like we're not offsetting that. But it got really expensive to buy a new phone, to have a new phone line, to have the credit capacitance, to add phone lines every time we were adding employees and then manage that cost. And then there's like they went and spent money on it. Like we had this one where somebody went nuts on a game and they were tied to the phone instead of like an SMS-based paying for stuff. Like just stupid stuff, right? Like just stupid stuff.
So many Candy Crushes.
So, yeah, thankfully those at least go through your account. Uh-oh, Dom's getting kicked out, bruv.
I might.
Is that you, legit?
Got that fire alarm going on?
That's awesome. I got a school alarm one time.
That's amazing.
It sounded like a school intercom, actually. That was weird.
It did.
It stopped, and
but
I don't smell any
Travis's
smoke,
question,
so we're gonna proceed.
some other solutions would be, to Dom's point, providing other solutions for email and other management, not having them use their phone for that purpose. Right? Using, if you have those frontline workers, giving them YubiKeys or other methodologies of authentication. You might even be able to talk somebody into putting a chip in their hand. I don't know, Tara, do you have any thoughts on that? Is that viable?
So
wait,
that doesn't actually work the way. Yeah. So this side is the regular RFID. This side is an NFC chip over on this side, right? So it's a lot of fun. There's a whole long story about I was actually the games master for Mr. Robot's village at the Tribeca Film Festival in 2016, and we needed to add a biophysical challenge to it. So I had a couple of chips put in so that people could steal my the string that I had embedded onto this chip and use it as part of the crypto puzzle that I designed. Anyway, so it's a long story, but it was a lot of fun. I had some really good pictures that weekend.
So we could go to implants.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, we can go to implants. I've got a YubiKey right here stuck in the side of my machine, but I'm also here to say, like, some of this goes to the expectation that you should not be able to get a hold of employees on their personal devices when they're not at work.
Social challenge in the 1 minute we have left.
I mean, absolutely. I'm the CEO of a tech company, and I'm sitting here telling you log off at the end of the day, right? They didn't believe me. I did that on my own. I'm being very, very polite today, but log off. And we cannot expect people to use personal devices for work purposes unless we want to take on the burden of managing those. And if we don't want to take on the burden of managing them, there's a real good excuse to go buy, if you need to, an updated, simple, still Android phone that will work to take calls. It will work to set an OTP auth on it or something along those lines. And you've got something that you can be reached for work on. That's not hard to govern. All right. And for mid-sized companies,
you also saw
that,
Microsoft. You also saw Microsoft just made it easier to register two-factor TOTP methodologies. I mean, I'm a bigger fan of FIDO. It's much more secure, but they are trying to make it more usable to have some of these kind of extensibilities. And to take Travis's last comment, which is go back to pagers, I would just be getting 143 all day. It's oh, so sorry. I'm so sorry. I digress. All right, fair. Tara, it's been awesome having you here. I'm so glad to hear that you are not pro BYOD. Dom, I'm sorry for supplanting your actual answer of BYOD-ness today. If we want to go ahead and close the show out.
All right, Tara, thanks for joining us. It's been a great show. And unchecked BYOD or the assumption that people are gonna follow rules. That's not a strategy. Anyways, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're coming up on the end of the year, and I keep forgetting we're coming up on the end of the year, but Matt, we are. So It's just you and I next week, and we're gonna take a look at 2024. I think it's important to see what went on because a lot went on, but then we're gonna cast some projections for 2025. I don't know about you. I'm not gonna write any down. Just gonna
come right off the
just
head.
gonna come to the show and we're gonna wing it. So
Yeah,
join
yeah,
us same time,
100%.
same place. And do some 2025 cybersecurity predictions.
Well, let's wrap up with play of the game, and then we'll get out of here. All right, I have 60 seconds yet again to espouse my beliefs on this. Tom Lawrence calls it bring your own disaster for BYOD, and I love that it applies here in every context, whether that be bring your own device disaster, whether that be bring your own external sharing platform, external system, external AI, bring your own all these things. And one of the things I think we learned out of this today, or I hope we did, is that sometimes we actually have to inspect what we expect. I'm absolutely stealing from Rex Frank on this one. But if you're not measuring it in new and novel ways and you're just expecting it, then you are choosing to be compliant. And good for you. I hope that works well for you because you're not choosing to learn to fight. I say in my classes, you can go to Taekwondo and get the belts and do all the katas. But at the end of the day, when I throw sand in your eyes, are you prepared to punch me in the crotch? At the end of the day, we have to understand that we have to actually measure for the security element, not just the compliance element, which means we have to check in unique and novel ways. I hope you are doing new things. See you next year.
Game over.
Man, I totally jumped the gun on the play of the game. Sorry about that, Matt. That is our show. See you next week, 2025 predictions. Same time, same place. See you then.